Welcome back to the Void Retro channel, everyone. It is me, John, or Void Retro, whatever you want to call me, and today we're continuing our series of hidden horrors. We're on Volume 2, which I'm very glad we can actually do this and showcase, underrated gems, indie games, AA games you may have missed, all within that horror genre. So you'll see things that are inspired by other horror games, completely creative new works, and things in between. A lot of it also has that low poly horror vibe, which I love. This is an ongoing series that you're going to see more of in the future, and we've got 5 to check out today. So after a little break from the first volume, why don't we dive right in and see what we've got on offer today. First up, something that's just actually released on all platforms now. We have a look at Alisa. Now, this is a combination of many aspects that meld so beautifully into one. We have the glorious visual style of PS1 polygons, FMVs, and a restricted aspect ratio, combined with survival horror gameplay like tank controls, claustrophobic level design, eerie melodic tunes overplaying in the background, and the save rooms. These two work so well together, but there's a third aspect I didn't know was included within this title. Dark Souls. Yes, it's a challenge. It's a frustrating one at times, but its core, Alisa, is a Souls game essentially. We have gears as a currency, used as a shop ran by a puppet. Even saving the game costs you, so it's like an ink ribbon system. Each enemy will drop these gears and various amounts depending on the challenge of the fight. It's a very interesting amalgamation of two genres, horror and Dark Souls-like games. The story itself begins with looking for essentially a fugitive, some kind of agent or police officer sent out on a task before quickly becoming kidnapped and embroiled in a bizarre plot. Something that also harkens back to the likes of Resident Evil is the voice acting. It's not great. It's a bit cringy, it's a bit cheesy, all that stuff. It's silly, and it has some downright funny moments, whether intentional because of the style or not. It can take you out of an otherwise very immersive and macabre nature to its game. It features incredibly well designed and thematic environments and enemies too. A dollhouse-like setting with circus aspects down to clowns, creatures, clockwork dolls, and more. It really scared me at times, and it's truly worth playing. We did this on stream, and yeah, it's a challenge and a spooky one at that. This game has a lot going for it, we can't lie. Especially now that we have the director's cut on multiple platforms like the PS5. So there's really no excuse, guys. Go and give this a go. It's one of the most unique horror gems I have ever seen on the market. Whether it's for you or not, that's for you to decide. 2 words for you. Tormented Souls. A game that really needs no introduction, but still seems to elude its existence to many horror fans and gamers in general that may not focus on that AA market that's above indie but not quite AAA. This game was originally released in 2021, with the sequel coming sometime in 2024, we hope. It's one of the best examples of the Resident Evil formula being applied to modern hardware and standards. Caroline Walker receives a mysterious letter, inviting her to a sinister location, a mansion or mental hospital, with the promise of finding out more about a pair of twins that seemed far too familiar to her to be a coincidence. Now, the aesthetics, environments, and general creative direction of the art design here is fantastic. It immediately reminds you of those old survival horror games. Everything from the UI, characters, weapons, and the enemies have clearly had serious passion imbued into them. The puzzles of this game are also some of the best in the indie horror scene we have seen to date as well. They're quite complex at times as well, and not everything is straightforward, so expect a bit of a challenge here. The combat takes a very old school approach too. There's resource management as well, knowing when to run and when to fight. It's a classic survival horror game for modern audiences. What makes this game so special is its attention to detail, its unique nature, and also some questionable voice acting, which we've already come across in today's video. It's also a common thread in the genre though, so we can't really, attack it for that. But whether you're shooting rotting monstrosities clambering towards you in rickety wheelchairs, scouring runes for the next piece to a puzzle, or scanning through files you find laying around, you are getting exactly what you paid for here. Excitement, tense atmosphere, investigation, in-depth brain-scratching puzzles, a femme fatale that can kick ass in a cool outfit, a slight bit of nudity if you're into that, and, combat with monsters and a challenge to overcome. What's not to love? The story itself, why not a blockbuster in scope, is interesting if a bit predictable. But this is an underrated gem, and it's a game in the shelves of horror that many of you may have missed on its first release. So that's why we're showcasing it today. With P-Cubed also developing a sequel, again, there is no excuse to miss what came first. Give Tormented Souls a go. It's available pretty much everywhere. It's just something truly special in that little indie AA market. Next up, we have a game I was introduced to by my partner. So even though I had missed this for years, I was shocked just how enjoyable and creepy it was. White Day, a school named Labyrinth, or just White Day, whatever you prefer. It's a Korean horror and puzzle game that oozes atmosphere and the dark lore of supernatural Asian culture. The game begins innocently enough, almost like an anime opening, with two characters seemingly having crushes on each other, just wanting to deliver Valentine's Day gifts. However, this is where White Day comes from. It's an Asian holiday from what I have deduced that comes after our Valentine's Day, by around 1 month. The game truly starts when your protagonist wants to deliver a piece of property back. It's a plot of spiralling domino effects, essentially. The visuals here are very stylistic, like a cartoon or anime vibe, and not photorealistic, which I honestly appreciate for a horror title, because a lot go for either super realism or low poly horror. We don't really get anything cartoonish very often. The audio is fantastic, from the sound effects you experience to the music as well. There's very eerie, almost fast-paced violin work going on at times. This is a bit creepy. And yeah, the voice acting is actually pretty strong here. I was surprised, but yeah, hats off to the English voice cast. Anyway, I didn't listen to the Korean. Unfortunately, there's enough creepy stuff going on to be able to read subtitles as well. But yeah, it's all available in English or subbed if you wish. It's extremely clever in its core gameplay loop of evading antagonists like the school janitor, and the spirits you come across in its environments and level design. There is a clear rhythm of the story, puzzle, chase, exploration in a tight loop to get you to the next area, and I really enjoyed its simplistic nature. It gives you a peek into a different culture, a country, another way of life, and especially as a teenager dealing with these supernatural forces. I'm growing to love the characters themselves, as we've yet to beat the game, something I actually have been playing on the Void Retro Twitch, so make sure you drop a follow over there if you're into that, or stop by sometime. We'd love to have you. The attention to detail on the Korean culture is fascinating and shows where the true soul behind this game's creation has come. It's different for the horror gaming landscape, and we need more Asian horror games in general, I feel. Especially with the likes of K-pop and K-dramas happening recently, I think it's becoming more of a, an accepted form of media in the West anyway. This game is just a true gem. It's available on pretty much every platform, perfect to play solo, with friends watching you and taking turns, or with the community like as a creator like I am. Luckily as well, if you can't get enough, there is a sequel coming, which is already out, but this is like a remastering of sorts. And I'm looking forward to featuring that in a further video if it's good too. But based on White Day, it scares, it's great atmosphere, and the interesting plot, it's something you really need to dive into yourself. As always, we always feature demos in this series, a sneak peek at great horrors to come, usually from indie studios, Today we have two, but first up we are speaking about the amazingly cool and retro game Hollow Body by Headwear Games, a tech-noir survival horror narrative with dark elements in an adventure set within a decaying British city. I mean, it's just intriguing when you read it out loud. You play as Mika. The story is simple. You're just looking for a friend that has been lost, and you get small snippets of that narrative that we see, but not a lot to go on. They're saving it for the full release. I mean, we have plenty of rundown cities in the UK in 2024 anyway, so the setting seems pretty apt. It's marketed as a short story, and the demo packs a big punch. It takes huge inspiration from the likes of Silent Hill 2, which I think is blatantly obvious, but it creates something unique for long-time survival horror fans to enjoy. I have had my eye on this game for a while now, and I had to feature it because the developers clearly have a passion project brewing here, and the love for the low-poly horror vibes that they also likely grew up on. It's modernising that classic formula that's really hard to do, and they've done it here for fans, and bringing it into 2024 is a really, really cool thing to see. I've always loved tank controls, and you do get tired of the typical third-person over-the-shoulder aspect that all the horror games pushed out every few months from the AAA industry we see all the time. Resident Evil 4 Remake was fantastic, but it did play it safe, obviously using that same camera angle that set the precedent back in the day. They have this hybrid follow the character versus fixed camera angle depending on the moment-to-moment gameplay and the cutscenes in the demo too. I really appreciate this, and Hollow Body is just another example of how these classic games have a hardcore audience still itching for this in this genre and scope. I love the attention to detail, the UI and the inventory. The stage is set for a huge hit later this year for its full release, so let's hope it delivers. Lastly today we have a final demo to take a peek at, one that was released in 2023 but I was never aware of and just recently saw it get featured in the Steam Next Fest event, bringing my wandering horror focused eye to its retro horror art style. Heartworm is another sleeper hit in the making here, and I feel from its eerie atmosphere that makes you just travel back to the 90s and noughties in a weird sense. It's just got great environments and nostalgic visuals to it. It deserves a place on this list just to showcase it for its demo alone, which is around 20 to 30 minutes depending how long you take with it. It respects your time and teases that little itch we love for those low poly horror fans, and that we know we sustain ourselves on. It's another Silent Hill inspired game leaning more into the psychological scope of horror than its RE-like survival brothers. The cinematics and the direction of the story, its characters, and even the voice acting is surprisingly good. Once again, we only get hints at the plot, but it's enough to drive our interest into the game's mechanics, and that's all you need with a demo. The music is also oddly nostalgic, but it's new. I'm not quite sure what part of my brain that music is scratching at, but I loved it. It just hits the spot like so many of these indie horrors do. In the words of the developer as well, Vincent Adonolfi, hope I pronounced that right, step into the world of the memories and people you have lost, which is an ominous, also hopeful message. The themes and atmosphere here are stellar, and what sets this game apart is the use of the main weapon, it seems. A camera. You defend yourself with photography, which is insane but reminiscent of Fatal Frame in a way as well. Inventory management, tank controls, anything that appears to be 3D rendered as well in the backgrounds, mixed with some blurry static ones. They seem a bit of a staple here, something we have come to expect in the genre to showcase as well. Weirdly, it even gave me Alone in the Dark overtones at times. But that's Heartworm, another game you definitely want to keep on your radar, and there's hundreds of these I'm going to focus on in the future, everyone, but there's only so many I can put into one video. So that's today's video, guys. Horror Vol.2, essentially. We're going to check out more hidden things, more underrated games, ones that I think, don't get enough attention, essentially. is what the focus of this series is, and I hope you enjoyed it. And if you've not already seen it, I do have my big Alan Wake 2 video on the channel. I had to take a break after that video because it was such a large project. So I like doing videos like this where it's just kind of an informal chat, not as fully scripted, where we can check out these games. And just to keep an eye out for, I am going to do a kind of retro-inspired version of this series in the future, which I think I'm going to call Retro Rewind. We'll see. But thank you so much for the support. Like and comment if you had fun on this video and want to check out more and support the channel. And I'll see you in the future. Bye guys.